and welcome everyone to my review of the new Napalm Death record, Throes of Joy in the Jaws of Defeatism. Now, before I start, I feel like I need to confess something and repent for my sins slightly. Up until last week, I was under the impression that Napalm Death basically only had one record, and that record was Scum. However, before this record dropped, I felt like I should go back and listen to the previous album to get a feel for the band in recent years. And I was pretty surprised to discover it's actually some pretty great death grind. So after this revelation, I had a little look around and wouldn't you know, it turns out Napalm Death have been great for just about 30 years and I've just been sleeping on them like a pillock. Not only are the records released in the mid-80s up to the early 90s after Scum widely considered to be better, but it seems like they also had a really solid run at the start of the 2000s that was kicked off by Enemy of the Music Business, which appears to be in reaction to some negative interactions with Earache Records. I couldn't really find much information on this, so if anyone knows the situation and is willing to share, I'd love to know the full story. But either way, for those who aren't familiar, Napalm Death basically birthed the grindcore genre, a genre defined by incredibly fast tempos, pretty aggressive and distorted guitar riffs, gnarly vocals, and incredibly short song lengths. But from what I understand, Napalm Death have actually gone on to incorporate a lot of other extreme metal genres into their sound over the years. And this is incredibly apparent right from the get-go on this new record with the track Fuck the Factoid. The track opens with some incredibly fast blast beats paired with some blistering fills over an equally fast riff, but it doesn't take too long to break into an almost black metal tinged section, which turns out to be surprisingly melodic. But just in general, this track packs an incredible amount into 2.5 minutes, really showing what Napalm Death are capable of in 2020. The track ends on a grotty bassline break that leads perfectly into the next track, Backlash Just Because. A slightly more mid-tempo riff fest that has these guitar leads that just melt beautifully into the mix and remind me of something a band like Conjurer or Mastodon might pull off. The final riff to this song really reinforces that comparison as well. So despite the fact that the overall sound is maybe slightly less one note than I thought it would be, the majority of these tracks is still very much what you would expect from an extreme metal project. Having said that though, a couple tracks do stray off this path and serve as nice breaks from the intensity. The track Amoral, for example, almost sounds like an amped up post-punk tune, and I really feel like the vocals could have clashed horribly with how melodic this song is, but I kinda love it, they pull it off super well. The final track, A Belly Full of Salt and Spleen, also provides an interesting detour in it being an industrial metal track, and it actually reminds me a lot of Swans, especially with the almost chant-like vocals carrying the song. Now, while this isn't completely new territory for the band, I do like the track and think it's a decent end, but I wouldn't say it's one of my highlights or anything. Speaking of highlights though, there are a lot across the 12 tracks on this album. I've already mentioned how impressed I was with Fuck the Factoid, but honestly a lot of the tracks across this record really pack one hell of a punch. Contagion sounds like something a band like Cancer Bats might play thanks to its doom-infused hardcore crunch. The track straight after brings a slightly odd industrial sound, with some grinding bass that sounds great. The track Zero Gravitas Chamber is another death grind track that stays utterly thrilling during its 4-minute runtime. I think the blast beat sections on this track are particularly menacing as well. And Fluxing of the Muscle is a total riff fest. Overall, I can't really say I have any major complaints other than a few underwhelming cuts in the track list. That Curse of Being Thrall was maybe a little too meat and potatoes for me, but it still serves as a fine third track to keep up the pace of the record. Invigorating Clutch I felt like was the only track that came across just a touch underbaked, and Acting in Gouged Faith felt a little unnecessary because I didn't feel like it brought anything new to the table. Having said all that though, overall the one thing I would consistently praise are the vocals, the most of which are a mix of screams and growls but with just enough variety to keep it from feeling too one note. But to be totally honest, even if this record was just Barney's growls, I think I'd still really like it. I personally can't quite believe just how compelling his vocals are. They have this incredibly gross quality to them that I just can't quite pin down. All I know is that every time he's tearing through one of these tracks, it feels a little bit like I'm chewing on grit. It's honestly incredible. In terms of musicianship, nothing here is too complex, but it's performed very well and the production is pretty crisp and clear, but it certainly doesn't feel overly robotic. I think for me personally, I would have appreciated one more detour along the lines of an Amoral, and maybe the production to be just a touch grimier, but without a doubt this is just another great death grind record from one of the longest running bands in the style. I'm feeling a 7.5 on this one. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to let me know and leave a like. If you've heard the record, make sure to share your thoughts, and also I hope to see you all soon in another video.